Welcome to the latest episode of the Crann podcast. I sat down with Donna O'Keaney, who is the lead facilitator for Breaking Barriers. Now, Breaking Barriers is back this September 14th. There's groups for children, youth and for adults, but the children and youth groups are unfortunately full. There is space for the adults group, so if you're interested in making new social connections, exploring your creative side, you don't necessarily need to have an interest in becoming an actor. There's a lot of work in writing and production involved. So if that's something you're interested in, do get in touch. You can contact Tara O'Donovan here at todonovan at crawncentre.ie for more information. And there'll be more information in the link in the description as well. On with the podcast. Welcome, Donna. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm good.
For listeners who may not know you, can you give a bit of an introduction about yourself and the work you do in the drama community in Cork, wider Cork area?
So my name's Donna O'Keaney and I'm a drama facilitator. I work with Graffiti Theatre Company and I also work with the Everyman, and more importantly I work here at Crann with Breaking Barriers, the youth theatre, the adults group and the kids group. So I've been in theatre 20 years, or my whole life really, but working as a teacher and a practitioner for the last 20 years. And I think in the last 6 years I trained as a drama therapist and then looked really at how do we include young people, all young people in the arts, and that's kind of been my expertise or my area of interest for the last 5 years, I would imagine. So yeah,
Fab.
That's me.
So what does your role as inclusion officer entail? What are the challenges that you're trying to overcome for people who have
all the barriers that you can imagine? So we look at the financial barrier. So we work in Blackpool in an area where maybe not everyone can afford to participate in the arts. So we look at ways of how do we support them and find scholarships for them. We look at different types of cultural backgrounds and how do we make sure we're open to that and our buildings are welcoming for everybody. We're currently thinking about making over the bathrooms so that they are more accessible, which is awesome because the more accessible we can be, the more everybody can take part, you know. So Crann obviously has we have this amazing building here, so we don't have to worry about those things, but most heritage buildings in Cork have very little or limited accessibility. So it's thinking about how do we get around it, what ways can we do, what can we do in the interim while we get the money to fix whatever we need to fix. And so really my job just is to be the voice of inclusion on a day-to-day basis, thinking, are we leaving anybody out? Who's not at the table and why are they not here? And is there something we can do to welcome them?
It sounds really interesting. I can imagine you come across a lot of interesting people in that role. Yeah,
and there's so many brilliant people doing such brilliant work. I think a lot of the time we don't ever get the training. So as theatre makers and practitioners or actors, there's a presumption of physical ambience and there's a presumption that you can walk and talk and move the space. And then all of a sudden you're faced with a group like Breaking Barriers, and I know for many facilitators it's kind of scary because you're like, we were never trained, what do we do? And it is that case of just giving it a go and asking them. Those young people are experts, they know exactly what they can do. So I go, hey guys, I'd really love to play Stuck in the Mud. How are we going to do this?
But there's also that element of true creativity is you're given parameters and you work out how to do what you need to do within those parameters, and this is just a different parameter to a traditional parameter or the parameter you're used to, I assume.
100%. When I first worked, I worked actually the very first time. I actually met some of these young people in School of Divine Child way back in the day, and they told me they love PE. And I was like, what does PE look like, guys? And I started to go. I just started to attend their PE class. And I realised actually this looks a lot like drama.
Yeah.
It's just a step to the left, you know.
Yeah.
And we just need to think about it a little bit more. And the more you do it, the more you figure it out. And when I don't know, I actually, that's my favourite question to them is, how do I make this work for you? And they always have an answer that's better than anything I could have offered in the first place. So really, they've been training me for the last 5 years and not the other way around.
In your role, I suppose, as the lead facilitator here for Breaking Barriers, like you said, there's one for children, one for teens and one for adults. What do you do with each of the groups, let's say, because obviously it's going to be very different for a child versus a teenager versus an adult. What kind of things do you work on with each of them?
Well, universally we play. You know, theatre is a playful engagement, so we do a lot of games and improv. But really, it's led by them. So, like, I would say we have a very child-led or person-centred practice. So normally it starts the year where I go, hey guys, what are we going to do? And then they tell me what they'd like to do, and then I try to figure out ways of supporting that. So last year we started on circus training with the children's group because they want to put on a circus. So I was like, okay, I don't have circus skills. We need some circus skills. So we had the Circus Factory come in and they were amazing. So we learned how to do quite a few things so that when we come in September, we are now looking at working on the show of that circus where we can showcase all our fabulous skills that we learned last term through the Circus Factory. For the adults, they wrote a play last year. It took us the year, and it was amazing. And we had some visiting artists also come in and have a chat. So Kel Menton came in, who is a writer and actually published young adult author now as well. So like they got to work with Kel around how we would think about writing a play, and the play is really about their life and this idea of how they can't have a spontaneous social life as adults because they're wheelchair users and nowhere is accessible for them. So it's the barriers of that social engagement that we often remove, the medical barriers, we often remove the kind of organisational barriers. But what about going for a pint? What happens? And the play is currently, its working title is Great That You're Out. Well done.
Oh, it's an impactful title.
Yeah, and it's something that was said to one of the group members, and I just thought, that kind of patronising way we look at people who are in wheelchairs and the presumption that they're children and they shouldn't be drinking and they shouldn't be out clubbing and partying and why not, you know?
Yeah. Well, it does sound like there's a lot of a skills-based practice.
Yep.
But it seems like there's a lot of benefits beyond the skills that you learn. Like, for instance, that play that you're working on seems to have a lot of emotional development involved in being able to address such and serious
reflecting.
Self-reflection, communication skills. What other kind of skills do you
like I would say theatre
on?
Across the board, whether it's the adults or the kids, is, you know, we become really good citizens through theatre. Like we learn to work together, we learn to compromise, we learn when our brilliant idea is not the right brilliant idea for today. We learn about budget and money management. In this our case, we can't have a trapeze. You know, we don't have the money for that. We learn how to listen and how to respond. Like I would say theatre really is training for life, socially, how to engage, how to deal with conflict. These particularly young people, I feel like young people with disabilities struggle with that. They don't want to come across as like bold or like the pretending of being the person causing the problem can sometimes be really hard, and you know, like learning that we're only pretending, but actually there are times in your life where you're going to have to stand up for yourself and you're going to have to get mad and you're going to have to demand the things that you want. So like we actually get to practice that.
You're addressing it in a safe space almost.
Usually so. Yeah. And I think the adults play really is that. Like last year the teenagers did a wonderful play, the youth theatre in collaboration with Graffiti's Youth Theatre, and it was about being teenagers. teenagers and just how their teenage brain develops and what that looks like, and that they're not just crap adults. They're actually exactly the way they're supposed to be. And
it's funny how that feeling extends into adulthood as well, Yeah. The benefit aren't just for the child or the adult going through breaking barriers, because like we've heard feedback inside from from a child's perspective, there's very little things that a lot of parents feel comfortable dropping their child off and going away and knowing that their needs are going to be facilitated for that hour. They don't feel comfortable leaving their child. They can do that in breaking barriers. What kind of feedback do you get from parents or family members about breaking?
I think it's that we've built a relationship over time that they trust, that we have their young people's best interest always at the centre of what we do, and also that we just treat them like regular young people. I got a beautiful text from one of the young people's parents after the show saying, "That was amazing, thank you, I just realised I have teenagers." And I'm like, great, you know, like we've learned something together through the play, and like I think that's a job well done from our end and from the young people's end, and to be brave enough to get up on the stage and say, actually, parents, you don't need to be so worried about us. You need to back off a little bit and give us the space to be teenagers. And we got to do that in the kind of safe distance that theatre gave us. But ultimately, that was the kind of reoccurring. They were like, we love you. We know you love us. We also potentially, want to stay up a little bit later. Or we want to pick our own clothes. Or kiss a boy.
Heaven forbid.
So I think that breaking barriers, we have a good relationship with young people, but with the parents, that they trust us to take their children and young people through these kind of complex ideas without, crossing any boundary for anybody. It's that safe way. I suppose I feel like it's a safe place for them to take risks. And I think for their parents, they're so happy to see them take a risk and see them jump outside their box a little bit and just play and laugh and be bold a little bit.
It's so interesting how that idea of risk comes up in every element of what we do here at Crann, because it's something that came up a lot in terms of just play outside, just physical play. The idea that no one, like, we're not trying to go out there and tell them to jump off a cliff, but the idea of risky play just allows you to develop that spatial awareness and thinking. What has been your highlight of working with breaking barriers? Because is it 2 years now?
I'm three full years in now. There's just so much. I think my favourite part is that I get to be granny all the time in a way. You get to be so proud of them and cheerleading for them and advocating for them. But at the same time, you're giving them a bit of a kick too. Saying, come on, you can do it. You can learn your lines. You have a kind of good balance, but I think they just surprise me all the time, and they teach me so much. I learned so much from being in their company. I loved the book they wrote for Story Seeds. We did a Story Seeds project last year, maybe even the year before, and they wrote a beautiful book called Tom the Troll Pirate. And Tom was a wheelchair user, but his granny was kind of insane, and she was worried about the risks he was taking, because he was a pirate, he was a certain level of risk in his life, and he wanted to soup up his pirate ship, but granny was having none of it. And I just thought you can't help but track through where they're at and what's going on for them, and the kind of ways around. And ultimately in their story, Breaking Barriers was the helper. Breaking Barriers was the character who distracted Granny long enough so that Tom could go and soup up his pirate ship. So I think in that, we're hearing the story of breaking barriers this summer to come, and to be safe and to play, but it's helping. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it absolutely does. I can see exactly why you do what you do, and it's a fantastic it's fantastic to see, and just to see everybody. I've sat in on 1 or 2 classes, and just to see what goes down is fantastic. It's brilliant. Breaking barriers, for anybody that's interested, I'll give details at the end about getting involved. But in terms of the wider performing arts community or community projects, how do you recommend people get involved?
Yeah, well, I suppose look for good places to go. You know, there's plenty of places, but we just affiliated Breaking Barriers with Youth Theatre Ireland, and their ethos as a governing support for youth theatres, like if their name is on it, it's worth going to. So that's whether you're down in West Cork or you're in Dublin or in Limerick, like find your nearest youth theatre and you will be supported to participate. And inclusion is something they're very invested in improving, and I just went to their festival and it was great. But I would say, like, find a group that's right for you.
Okay.
And each group does something different. They have different things to offer. Like, we've done a lot of collaboration with Graffiti's Youth Theatre, but we've worked with Superstar Stage School as well. And just finding those connections. I'm hoping the Everyman's Young Company will come and support the adults in the performance of their amazing play, because there are some extra background people that we need to tell the story. And who better but the young people of Cork, who also have experience of being out at night and not, I suppose, not being very welcomed into all the spaces either. So I think they might find common ground there. And the Circus Factory as well, you know, they were brilliant. So I think find the one that works for you, but look for good people.
Good people are easy to find when you keep your eyes out for them, for sure. Well, listen, Donna, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for calling in. I will give details for anybody who is interested in getting involved. But the new term starts soon, and especially in the adults group, the kids groups tends to be quite popular. The youth group, I think, is just filled up as well.
Yeah.
But the adults, if you're interested in it,
we're looking for production staff for our new show. So if anyone's interested in learning that side of theatre, we would be delighted to have. Because
it isn't just all about performance.
No,
it's very practical.
And like last year, we took the whole year to write this play, because it meant something and it means something, and like we would love some eyes even in the room and some feedback, because we're telling a story that isn't my story to tell, and you know, and we have this kind of motto, like, nothing about us without us, and I think it's very much their story. So I'd still love as much input. We haven't put it up on its feet yet, so it's still flexible in terms of that. So if anyone has a story to add, we'd love to hear.
Fab. And we'll put those links down in the description for anybody who's looking for it. Thanks a million, Donna.
No problem at all. Thank you.
This podcast has been recorded at the Crann Centre. For more information about the topics discussed in this episode, please see the show notes in the description. For more information about the supports Crann provides to families living with neurophysical disabilities in Munster, please see www.crawncentre.ie.